3 decades ago, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers captured my imagination. Like many of my fellow 90s kids, I watched after school, joined the official fan club, and of course, collected the toys. Eventually, I put those toys away, but the flame of my Power Rangers fandom never died. Now, in this milestone 30th anniversary year, I am re-examining the show, its legacy, and the tale of its most legendary ranger across media. It's time to get back to action. Welcome to Summoning the Zords, a Power Rangers fan journey. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss the end of the Mighty Morphin era and the beginning of Power Rangers Zeo is the host of the KRYPTON Report podcast, returning guest Tyler Patrick. Welcome back.
Welcome. All I have to say is Zeo Ranger 3, blue. Just because blue is my favorite color. I didn't have a love for the, 3, whatever. I'm glad to be here. Like, this is such a fun, weird part to talk about. And we'll really dive into it. I know we will, because as so many notes, it was one of those things like my memory of when I was a kid and this happened, and then not really realizing how it ended, and I'll elaborate on that more as we get into it. But, and then when they dropped them on Netflix, how it was broken up differently. It was cool to go back and do this because this was an interesting era. This was the biggest change to Power Rangers, period. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this.
I'm so excited, and so many things came up, so many memories came back as I was going through the preparation for this. So just to lay out for people what we watched and what we'll talk about. So there's the 3-part Master Vile and the Metallic Armor storyline. And then the final Mighty Morphin episode, Rangers in Reverse, where the villains reverse time and turn the Rangers into children. What we did not specifically rewatch, but what I know you and I both remember and we'll touch on, is that 10-episode Alien Rangers arc, which I think this is probably what you're referring to when you talk about how they split it up. So
yeah,
on the DVDs, for example, it's just a separate thing. And I think a lot of places and maybe even... Well,
Netflix had it. Yeah, they had it like Mighty Morphin ended with the Rangers Reverse, and then it was Mighty Morphin Power. It was just Alien Power Rangers or Power Rangers Alien or something, and they had it as a 10-episode thing as a separate. And that's why I didn't remember that's how Mighty Morphin ended.
Yes, and so the DVDs similarly have it as its own separate thing, and currently, I don't know if you've noticed this, but the official Power Rangers YouTube channel, they've been putting up almost all of the seasons, and they have the Alien Ranger arc as season 3A of Mighty Morphin. So in terms of how you classify it, I guess it sort of depends on what you're looking at. But for me, it's really, Rangers in Reverse is the end of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and then we sort of have this little bridge miniseries, which again, we'll touch on. And then we watched Zeo Beginning parts 1 and 2. And this is, from a personal standpoint, I mean, this was the last season that I watched. And this was also the first time that we had a change in title and powers and costumes. And we've talked about this on the show, how, they really kept the Mighty Morphin era going. They were filming more and more of footage of the stunt people in the costumes, right, and all of that, and had really exhausted all of the Japanese footage, and they were mixing and matching because, as we've talked about, the White Ranger was from a different Super Sentai series than the rest of the Mighty Morphin Ranger, so they really bent over backwards to keep the Mighty Morphin costumes and powers and all of that. So this was huge. I mean, again, now anyone who's been following the franchise for any period of time, every year you get a new cast, you get new costumes, you get new powers, all that stuff, all new Zords. But like this was huge. And I just remember feeling it was exciting. I mean, what sort of emotion do you remember feeling at this time when you were watching it as a kid?
Well, what's crazy is, looking at it now, I understand that they still had this ninja footage from the Ninja series that they hadn't used because they did the Ninja, like Ninja, they did all this, But actually, the Rangers in Ninja, when you really study the footage in the different series, they hadn't used. So they basically created this Aquitar Alien Rangers to just use this footage that they had. That's basically what it is. And what I remember as a kid, I didn't like the Alien Ranger. I didn't watch any of it. When they like turned little, and then the next episode I did, but then when they brought the Aquitar, I was like, I don't want to watch this. I did not like it. So I didn't watch it. And then I remember, I think they were in episode 2 or maybe 3 of Zeo. Like, because I was looking at the time frame of when technically Mighty Morphin ended and Zeo started. And it was only like a couple of months. I have it in my notes, and we'll talk about it. But then I was kind of mad, to be honest, that they were doing it like this. And my friend was like, "No, Zeo's so cool." So I watched it, and it was neat, but I don't know. I wasn't there. Like I wasn't excited. I felt almost more betrayed, because one was Billy was always my favorite Ranger. Of course, I went through my Tommy phase and my Adam, but I really always liked Billy. And he wasn't a Ranger anymore. And of course, that last phase of Mighty Morphin really quickly is like Kimberly's out, it's Cat, and we got to Zeo, and I kind of felt like I've been on this ride, and like I've been following all of it, and now like you completely have just dumped everything. And part of it's because I didn't see the first 2 episodes of Zeo. Maybe if I had, it would have been a little bit smoother because I didn't realize how smooth it actually is until rewatching it before and then rewatching it for this. But I remember Zeo was one I in and out. I feel like I watched. I didn't get to follow it as tight, and then I dropped out for Turbo. This is but then I told you before, like I came back and watched some of Space. But you and I talked about before, like a little hidden fact was Zeo originally stood for Zordon of Eltar's Odyssey, is what the abbreviation. But I guess they just kind of dropped that and just used Zeo. But what I found fascinating was just how much the Zeo crystals talked about in Mighty Morphin building up to it. So I mean, it really is a beautiful transition because I guess in my mind, I felt like it was very like, just chop, stark. That comes later, but it really is a nice little build up and hand off to Zeo. So
No, for sure. I mean, I had forgotten all of that too, and we get right into that Master Vial and the metallic armor arc, and instantly we're talking about the Zeo crystal, and Tommy and Kat have to break into the Moon Palace and retrieve the crystal, and there's all this back and forth, and in the end, the Rangers destroy the crystal and scatter it throughout time, and then of course, in the Alien Rangers arc, as kids, they have to go through time and get the pieces of the crystal back. It really built nicely. It's funny because on the one hand, part of me feels like I wish that there had been a little bit more finality or a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more of an occasion that Mighty Morphin was ending.
yes,
But I think I say that through an adult lens, and it's like, oh, we had all this time with this Mighty Morphin era, and it would have been great to put more of a bow on it, make it clearer, like this version of the story is coming to an end. But I think they did it in a smart way because it really just flowed right into Alien and then into Zeo. They really kind of just carried you along. And I think if they had made more of a big deal, like it's the finale of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, you run the risk of kids being like, oh, okay, I guess the show is over. So
yeah,
they just kind of shuffled you along through, and it made sense. So I do get it.
yeah. I mean, I agree. Like if I had watched it, like I said, I feel like thinking back, like the Alien Rangers just really turned me off. I did not like the Alien Rangers, and our Rangers in the end age up just to have the change. But the one thing I do want to say, just kind of backing up real quick, I find it humorous, because and I haven't listened to your episode yet. I know it just dropped about when Kat comes in. But what I find humorous about it is the fact that when Jason, Trini, and Zach leave, it's this big deal about the sword to do the power transfer. But then, like, each time it just becomes basically almost like here's my morpher. You got this, bro. You know, like when Kat comes in, it was very simple of Kimberly just handing her coin kind of thing. And like, because I went back a little bit, just to kind of get a little bit more context because I knew that we were coming into like the first arc after Kat had become Power Ranger. And it was just kind of funny to me, like how much the power change was a big deal with those three. But then substantiary times, what word did I just say? Each time afterwards, it just got more and more easy to give somebody their power or the power coin or whatever. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things we just kind of have to go along with. Although, as I did say, in fairness, in the Pink Ranger episode we just did, I feel like at this point in time, their powers had changed. They were still the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but now they had the the coins forged by Ninjor, right, and the ninja powers that they were deriving their energy from. So the power source had shifted. So maybe that allowed for an easier
I'll,
transfer.
I'll
But
roll with it.
my head canon though is that now that they had the sword of power, Zordon had somehow internalized that energy and was now able to effectuate these transfers without literally holding the sword. It's like they had the power of the sword, and they were.
No,
That's my head canon.
I works.
I'm gonna go with
I'm gonna
that.
go with it. The show, I mean, it's logical, but I always did like I always felt like I thought about this. You and I had touched on it very briefly, just you and I's messaging about the Forever Red episode. Like there was no representation of the Red Ninjetti. Like those costumes were so cool. Just the ninja costumes themselves. Where was the Ninja Red on that episode? He was still a ranger. That could have
Well,
been Rocky, but
that's the so like that's the thing. They really that was a glaring omission. Rocky I think earned his spot and he should have been there. And yes, I suppose we can't have two red Mighty Morphin Rangers, but yes, they could have had him in the Ninjetti garb. That could have been a way to sort of incorporate him. But I guess in terms of the footage that they were working with, because the Ninjetti was just for the American version. So
which is cool. I mean, it's interesting, like you said, like when you get to the end of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, how much they were shooting American footage because they had exhausted so much. They had exhausted all the Japanese footage, and it's also funny, going back and watching that the scene where Tommy joins them at the end of Green with Evil is what they later use as the recycled footage for calling on the Thunder Zords and stuff. It's just kind of funny.
yeah, it's one of the things that I go back and forth on is how long they waited to switch up the costumes and everything and change the series. And on the one hand, I get it, right? Because you've engendered all of this loyalty and kids know this version of the characters. And so, yeah, it is a risk to now call it something different and switch it up and different kind. They switch colors, there's a lot going on. But at the same time, and maybe aside from exhausting the footage, I have to imagine another big driver for ultimately, taking the plunge with Zeo. It's like, well, now you can sell kids all these new toys. It's like,
Well, I mean, we're going to talk about it, but to me, that was the whole point of the metallic armor was now we can make sparkled version of the exact same figure, and they'll buy it again because now it sparkles.
yeah, that
You
felt,
know.
I felt like, all right, what are we doing here? It's like, they
Oh,
introduced this whole new component with so few episodes left to go.
I have one question for you, and I want you don't have to answer it, but as we go through this conversation, I want to keep it in the back of my mind. How would you have felt if in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, that's where they went from Mighty Morphin to Zeo? And what they went to Thanos was for the Zeo power instead of the ninja arc. Now think about that. You don't have to answer it right now, but just as we talk through this, kind of like keep in the back of your mind.
All right, fair enough. We'll do. I'll let that marinate. The other big thing that we have to say, because I feel like anyone who fan of Zeo or not, but anyone who watched Zeo, that music, man, that theme song, man, is that catchy. That sticks
It's
with you.
it's it's still Wasserman, man. I love Ron Wasserman's music. Like it is probably next to John Williams, like the music of my childhood. Like he did all the themes. Uh, he knew how to use the word "go" multiple times without it seeming redundant. Like "go Power Rangers Turbo," "go Zeo." Like Go red, go white ranger, go green. Like he knew how to use the word. But yeah, like the Zeo music is great because it still uses a lot of the same music and everything of Mighty Morphin. Like it's toon, 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 and it's stronger than before. Go Zeo.
Yeah.
Power up for more. Go Zeo. Rangers at the door. Zeo, Zeo. Go, go, Power Rangers. Like it still is
Yeah.
using what we know. So we're still like, yeah, this is it. This is it. They're just now they're the Zeo. And
Yeah.
it's
Like
it pumps you up, man.
absolutely it gets you excited, and yeah, having that go Power Rangers, like it still has that connection. And I think that's the thing that, I mean, I don't know if you had asked me as a kid, and so when Zeo was airing, I think I was in fourth grade, right? Because that was the last year that I watched, and it was fourth grade. And but I don't know if you had said to me, like again, like I said, I remember it was exciting that we had this shift. But again, I don't know that I even really thought, like it just kind of all felt like of a piece to me. I don't know that if you had said like, "Oh, is this a new series?" This like I don't know that I would have even thought of it in those terms. And I think that again, the way that they carried you along through that little mini series and into Zeo, the music, it just kind of all felt of a piece. So I do give them a lot of credit because that again could have risked losing people, and I think they really did a great job on that front. So yeah, the music though is just. I mean, had that stuck in my head since I started rewatching these episodes, but it's great.
Oh, it's great. I mean, I can't say more. Like I had the Mighty Morphin album, and I wish like Ron Wasserman a few years back did where he replayed and redid all the songs from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and I wish he would have re-recorded the themes for Turbo, Zeo, and Space. He did all those as well. Because that would have been cool to hear. It's just like this Mighty Morphin opus of like you could because you can really kind of follow the show story through the theme songs as well. So
Absolutely. All right, so let's dig into the last major arc of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the three-part Master Vile and the Metallic Armor. So this introduces Master Vile as Rita's father, introduces the Zeo crystal, gives the Rangers this metallic armor, which is an enhancement to their costumes and powers that they can only call upon in extreme emergencies, because it's sort of unclear, what effect it could have on them, and the amount of power that they're tapping into. It's dangerous, so they can't use this all the time. But if they're really in a bind, they can call upon it. Now, I'm going to jump ahead for a second. What drove me nuts about Rangers in Reverse is we have the Rangers split up fighting the Tenga Warriors, and we have the three who are just kind of like fighting them in a parking lot, and they summon the armor, right? Because they need it. But Tommy, Kat, and Rocky are going up against Rito, who's trying to plant this orb that will reverse time. And it seems to me that maybe that would have been a good opportunity to call upon this armor. It drove me nuts.
yeah, and what else is going to drive me nuts is when we talk about here their rules on time travel. So we'll get there about what exactly was being reversed because yeah, but we'll get there.
Yes, that begs some questions as well. But I want to say big picture about Master Vile and the Metallic Armor. We've looked at a number of multi-part stories over the course of this podcast so far, and a lot of times my critique is that they don't always feel like they warrant as many episodes as they get. Ninja Quest, for example, is one that we looked at recently, and that was a four-parter, and a lot of that is like the Rangers wandering around through the desert, and it's like, okay, we probably could have done this in three. But I do feel like, and this extends to the Pink Ranger episodes that we talked about recently. I do think as they made their way, closer to the end here, I think they got better at the multi-part stories. And I mean, I'm curious to get your take, but I feel like with Master Vile and the Metallic Armor, I felt like it justified the three episodes, and there were really, distinct pieces in each one. And I thought that they kind of had the formula down a little bit more now. What did you think?
I agree because I feel like Master Vile's appearance, what he kind of does, and they're introducing more of like the Zeo crystal. They're introducing this like it's a perfect setup without it being forced with all what they're actually building. Because like, going back now, we see, oh wow, they're planting the Zeo, where they're going to go with all this. Um, I feel like yeah, it's warranted. It works. I'm looking at my notes here for just parts one, parts two, and everything. Um, I really feel like Master Vile was one of those villains like at the end that I remembered, but I forgot. Like, it's like I forgot what he looked like. Like I knew the name, I knew it was Rita's father, but I couldn't remember what it was. And did you do any background research on Master Vile?
As host, I probably should have, but no, I didn't.
So like I was reading, like he was an archaeologist basically, and he had like a vision. One was his daughter, like his wife was pregnant, and she was going to be completely evil. And one was she was going to be good, and it like drove him insane. And it was the Dark Master that did it, that drove him insane, and eventually turned him into the evil Master Vile, which then, of course, created his daughter to become Rita and his son Rito. Because, of course, I always wondered why they all looked the way they did, but it was like, I was like, that's really interesting, lore.
Wait, lore from
Uh,
Super Sentai or from the comics or?
I was just reading about, I think it's from, I don't know, honestly, because I was just reading about the character, like the character history. I
I
probably should
wonder,
have
that
put
might
where
be
it was
some,
from.
and I'm sure audience members know. Please let us know. But I feel like that might be more comic book lore
Maybe.
because I don't know. And I have now been delving a little bit into Super Sentai, and of course Rita is Bandora there, and I don't. I mean, I don't know. Well, I would have to. But either way, regardless of where it comes from, that is very fascinating backstory, and I appreciate you sharing that. So yeah, so Master Vile shows up. So we get, we're on the on the villain moon base. We're in this. We've been in this, dysfunctional, wacky family comedy essentially that continues to
It
grow.
is
First
interesting
with how far
how much
Zed
they
has
do.
come from
Yeah.
his very dark, ominous entrance. Yes. But we have Rito now as the brother-in-law. Now we get the father-in-law coming in. And, instantly he lays out this plan, right, to obtain the Zeo crystal, which is, again, beneath the Moon Palace, but can only be retrieved by someone good, not someone who has evil within them. And so, we'll kind of see what his plan is going to be to ultimately try to use one of the Rangers to obtain it. But his arrival causes all of these these disturbances in the sky and everything, and this messes up the Rangers and their horseback riding outing.
With Bulk and Skull and the police chief, because Bulk and Skull are police officers in training,
Yep,
which I
the
thought was
junior police patrol. Although, like I said, I've really come around. I've been enjoying this especially this iteration of Bulk and Skull. So it's all good. But of course, they talk to Zordon and Alpha, and Zordon always knows what's going on, right? So he knows Master Vile, and he's more evil, and then it's always this escalation, right? Every time there's
yes.
someone new comes,
Oh,
they're always more evil, they're always more powerful.
and we have to power up and get like a bigger power to fight them. Like, yeah,
Yeah, I have to say
that's in
though,
my notes from when we get to King Mondo of how much they stress that.
but I have to say one of the things that kind of bugged me about the end of the a different shade of pink arc was that Ninjor had been captured, and so much of that arc was the Rangers trying to get him back, and the villains were trying to get the Rangers to trade Cat for Ninjor, and there's all this back and forth, and that arc ends with Ninjor still trapped, still still in the clutches of the villains, and there's like nary a mention of him, and I remember being like, I know this, they follow up on this, but it just felt like, hey, you really forgot about this guy. So thankfully, we do get some follow up here. Although he just by happenstance, like he catches a lucky break when Rito drops the jug that he's in, and that allows him to escape.
Is that this? Okay, so I was going to ask you this because is that the same time when they kidnap the Falcon Zord?
Yes.
Because they talk about she has the Falcon Zord, and was it something else she had? She had Ninja and the Falcons. Because I heard them say that. I was like, when did that happen?
Yeah. So
So
that was in the previous arcs, and so essentially, so yeah, I mean, obviously we pick up with Ninjor in that jug, and Rito drops it, and he escapes, and he's able to get back to the command center and fill them in on Master Vile's plan to try to get the Zeo crystal. But yeah, Rita and Zed also had the Falcon Zord. They were able to obtain this when Cat was under their evil spell. But the upshot of the Rangers not having the Falcon Zord, without that, they're unable to command the Ninja Megazord. So that necessitated the Shogun Zords. But and I loved this bit, and I know we're fans of Billy in particular. He comes up with this remote device that allows them to imitate the energy of the Falcon Zord so that they can call upon the Ninja Megazord. And we get instances where they're using both of the Megazords in these. That was great.
It was awesome. It was awesome. I totally forgot that they had the scenes of both of them because I was like, oh yeah, because like I had the toys of the Shogun Megazord, and my brother had the toy of the Ninja Megazord. I just remember like it was so hard to find original Mighty Morphin toys, but we had some. But at this point, like having both those Megazords was cool. As the toys, and then I totally forgot there was actually an episode with both of them together. Because like I
Yeah.
said, I kind of just stopped watching the aliens because I didn't like the Aquatarians. So it appears like that again, but yeah. But this was fun to rewatch and see, and I had forgotten when the metallic armor showed up, but I did remember those suits. You know,
Yeah. So we get this addition, right? This upgrade, and again, ultimately, it proves necessary here because Master Vile is able to supercharge the Tenga warriors. So now it's the stakes have been raised, and they need this additional power in their battles. It's funny to me because in this last stretch of Mighty Morphin, first we get the ninja powers and the insertion of this ninjetti stage, right? This
hmm
pre-morph, right? Which we don't see any of in these episodes that we watched. And Master Vile and the Metallic Armor and Rangers in Reverse, they don't call upon that. But we had that, and then now the Metallic Armor, and I don't know. Well, we've talked about the ninja piece a lot, but the Metallic Armor, I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. It didn't,
it just
it's
felt like it was a
fine.
way of selling toys. Or
Yeah.
like the movie. Okay, the movie figures, for example, were the exact same as the original Mighty Morphin figures, and I still have. Shoot, where is it? It's around here somewhere. It might actually be packed up. Packed up. I still have. I had all five. I had all six, but then through moves and stuff, I still have the Black Ranger. I still have. Was the exact same, Mastodon figure, but then they made them sparkle for the movies. So this was kind of like they could resell those same figures again with new packaging as the metallic armor. Um, but I want to know, like, could you morph into the ninjetti and then call upon the metallic armor? I want to see the ninja outfits and sparkles. Uh,
Yeah, no, it feels like a missed opportunity. Another wave of toys they could have thrown out there. I guess it was just because we were so close to the end, and it just kind of felt like we've already had the ninja piece. I don't know. It just felt like a hat on a hat sort of thing. It's like, what are we
yeah,
doing here? But it's
I
fine.
mean, yeah, considering that it's 3 episodes, then one, and then ninja, or then alien, and then so. Um,
What did you think about this whole objective and the strategy that the Rangers utilize, where they send Tommy and Kat to the Moon Palace to try to retrieve the Zeo crystal from down below?
I thought it was neat, and I thought it was interesting because there's the line. I think it's in part two where they talk about if you've ever been evil or like under an evil spell, you can't retrieve the crystal. And Kat has a. I forgot. I'll be honest. How much of a love story was between Tommy and Kat? And because I always think about Kimberly and Tommy, but I really forgot how much they cemented Tommy and Kat as a couple, as an item until going back watching these and then other things I've watched recently because it's been a while since we've talked Power Rangers. Um, so sending those two, like they really have a parallel of being used for evil. Kat came out of it differently than Tommy did, and I thought it was interesting. That she's basically willing to sacrifice herself because. But the other thing that caught me off guard is her amazing ability to be, unhelmeted and breathe on the moon. Like, and there's gravity on the moon. Like, I don't know, physics was starting to get to me in this time. Like, they're on the moon. They can walk. They can breathe. I mean, I'll go with it when they're more fully with their helmets buckled. But she's got her helmet, and I'm just like, hey, at least try to make me believe that it's going to work. So.
I, to your point about the love story, that's the thing. I know everyone always goes to Tommy and Kim, and I get it, and I love the two of them together. Don't get me wrong, but there is a very compelling argument to make for Tommy and Kat. And actually, the next episode that we're going to do will look at like a 7-episode stretch, including the 3-parter. There's no business like snow business, where Tommy gets the Dear John letter from Kimberly breaking up with him. And so, we'll start to see that relationship, move along even more. And of course, we know from the, one of the Christmas episodes that in the future, we know Tommy and Kat are together. There's also that Soul of the Dragon original graphic novel. And of course, the once and always very recently establishing the son had already been established, but now we get confirmation that Kat is the mother. So, I mean, this is in terms of the lore of this franchise, they're together. But I think that like I said, I think there's something really compelling that they both gone down this path under Rita's spell and found redemption and came out the other side and became heroes. And I love this team up between the two of them here. And I didn't have as much of an issue about the gravity or the oxygen. I assume that
I just let it go. It's
magic.
just one of those things. It's just one of those things I chuckle to, but I let go.
But
Like, I just think it's
you know what got me? I'm
what?
saying to myself, they could just teleport to the moon base.
Yeah, like they've never thought about, hey, let's just attack them while they're asleep. Like it always felt like it had to be a little bit clever. Like I always remember back, when the Green Ranger teleported into the command center because he had a power coin. It was, oh snap, you know. So on the reverse, the Power Rangers can just teleport to the moon base, just attack them, like, yeah. But that is one of those kind of things you don't think about as a kid. You're just going with it. You're in.
Yeah, but no, that's a great point about the Green Ranger, and also in the Pink Ranger episode we talked. There's an instance where Zed enters the command center, but Zordon has to grant permission first. And so again, it just feels like there are certain rules that are established, and for convenience, it's like, okay, they needed to get the two of them there. But yeah, I was just thinking to myself, you could do this the whole time, like mounted assault, attack the moon.
You could plan to use your teleporter bomb, and just blow up the moon base.
Yeah, I mean that that too, but
okay,
But once they're there, the whole ploy is that Kat is going to pretend she wants to be evil again, which is a great setup. And Rita and Zed put her in this, what's it called, the Revivifier, I believe.
Yeah, it's basically she's standing in a fire pit, and it's just lighting her up. And once it gets to the top, she'll be evil forever. And then that's when they're like, oh no, this is going to backfire. Of course, Tommy's got to go to was it the Caves of Despair?
Or Deception.
Deception, that's what it was.
Deception.
Yeah.
So he sees all of these visions, right? He's like, tempted by, he's seeing all the different Rangers and Goldar, and, he has his wits about him. He knows that they're not real, and he's able to get through all of it. And this was, honestly, I think for this 3-parter, this was my favorite sequence where, and you had mentioned this earlier, this vision of Kat talking about how you can't retrieve the Zeo crystal from this force field that it's in because you had evil, you once had this evil within you when you were under Rita's spell. And that's enough to sort of taint it and prevent you from doing it. And when he reaches in, Tommy and we see all of these flashes of the journey that he's had, starting with his evil turn as the Green Ranger, but then breaking free of the spell and joining the team and becoming the White Ranger and the leader. And I just felt like, man, like this was a really cool touch to show his journey, what he's overcome, what he was kind of working through in that scene. That was, I think, my highlight for that arc in particular.
I think the second part's the best episode out of the 3, like just because because you have that, you have this. I feel like there's stakes that's put with Cat, like in that fire. Like there's that felt more authentic than like what we'll see later when uh, Glauber. We even talked on Glauber. That's the main Master Vile villain. That's all 3 episodes is taking on the Rangers and the Zords. But when they escape there, they're able to take back the Falcon Zord, and I think was it. I know it was on one of your previous episodes, and it made me laugh real hard about Angel Grove's ability to rebuild the city after these mass destructions constantly. It made me laugh because I always thought, as Superman fans, people always talk about all the destruction in Man of Steel. I'm like, have you ever watched Power Rangers? like, there's no conversation like that was like an empty industrial building. Megazords are just stepping on everything and knocking monsters over, and stuff's blowing up everywhere. But it just made me chuckle.
No doubt. But yeah, I mean, so Tommy has this triumphant moment and obtains the Zeo crystal, and he's able to use that energy to undo the effects of the Revivifier. And he grabs the bird cage with the Falcon Zord in it, with the curtain over it, and they're able to teleport out of there and join the rest of the Rangers in battle. They've got both Megazords. They're able to secure the Zeo crystal within the Zord. All good. Until, of course, Glauber, this monster that Master Vile has conjured, is able to, drain the Zord's energies, and the Zords with the Zeo crystal inside are transported away. And that's sort of
Which I thought was crazy.
Cliffhanger. Yeah.
They're like, we can't locate the Zords. And I was like, dang, that was pretty, that was pretty intense, honestly. Like, the fact that the villains could teleport the Zords away. I'm like, oh, that's new. Kind of like with teleporting to the moon base, like just kind of pops up. We're just going with it.
Yeah. Well, again, we have a new adversary here, right? We have Master Vi. I think I can kind of go along with some of this because he's the different. He's more powerful, so maybe some of the rules of the game have changed a little bit. But yeah, I mean the Zords are drained; they're teleported away with the Zeo crystal, and Glauber is able to drain the Rangers' energies as well. So they're really against the ropes as we're heading into part 3 here. And Master Vile, enacts his plan. He's going to use the power. He's going to channel the power of the Zeo crystal and destroy Earth. And he forces the humans to have this farewell Earth party where poor Bulk and Skull have to dance the conga.
Yeah, that's torture, man. Like, I had that in my notes of like, this is a party at the juice bar. And because we have Tommy, Rocky, and Kat at the party, Goldar shows up, and we had the mention of the M51 Galaxy. And my favorite was the big toe emergency exit in the Zords.
That was, right after Tommy's moment of triumph with the Zeo crystal and Billy coming up with that remote Falcon Zord. I think my third favorite piece of this was when they do go to this other galaxy. They're able to locate it and teleport there, and Zordon's able to give them enough of a charge where they can do this. And they find the Megazords, and it's like, yeah, to your point, like they have to enter through the toe of the Zord, and they're in the engine room of the Megazord. It's like, and audience, correct me, I don't know of any other instance where in Mighty Morphin where we see that, where we're in other parts of the Zord, and it was cool.
Yeah, that was like, I think you and I talked about, we read the first arc of the more modern comics, was we saw Billy like working in the Zords. We saw like different chambers, because all we ever saw was them like in the command part of the Megazord or in the individual Zords. So to see them kind of sneak through the toe was cool. And I do want to point out, because I have this in my notes at this point, just thinking is, we're closing in on the end of Mighty Morphin. Billy's the only OG Ranger left.
Yeah.
By this time, you had Rocky, Adam, and Aisha. Tommy, as the second when Kimberly's gone. Billy's the only original Ranger left on the show.
Yeah. And as we'll talk about more in a moment, this is the end of his time as a Ranger, even though he'll stick around in a scientific advisor capacity moving forward. So, yeah, I mean, we really are coming to the end of an era here, no doubt. But, yeah, it was cool to see them, again, entering the Zord through the toe and being in the engine room, just seeing them in this different setting, seeing a different piece of the Zord as they're able to, they're really able to channel all of their energies, and they put their fists together and they're able to break Master Vile's connection to the Zeo crystal, and of course return and have their final battle and triumph as they do.
Take out
And
Globber, who had possessed Ninjor, we might add, because
yes,
they were killing Ninjor by fighting Globber. They had to separate Ninjor and Globber, or they would kill their friend.
yeah, poor Ninja. I mean, it's like he had been captured and, I argue, forgotten. Then he catches this
Yes.
lucky break and he's able to escape. And then in the same episode is instantly captured again by the souped up
Yep.
Tengas. And then, yes, I'm glad I had forgotten that. Thank you for reminding me that there was this connection between Ninjor and Globber, where every time they were hitting Globber, poor Ninjor was feeling it. Thankfully, I think Alpha, right, was able to piece together that Globber was drawing from the darkness, this eclipse that Master Vile had created. So they're able to restore the sun, and that weakens Globber and restores Ninjor.
I didn't realize there was an eclipse until they said there was an eclipse. It didn't feel like an eclipse. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll just go with this. Okay. But yeah, we have the two Megazords fight. They defeat him. And then, like you said, like they have the Zeo crystal. And they're like, we're going to break up the crystal and hide it. And what's neat is when they break up the crystal and they hide it, like we see the colors and the shapes.
Yes.
Like as the crystal goes around, we see, and it's kind of cool. Like they know what they're doing. So it's like neat foreshadowing, even in the sense that we, the audience at that time, didn't know what was going to happen. So it's just kind of like we said, like, there really is this beautiful, seamless transition that we don't even realize we're part of at the time. And I think, had you not done the Alien saga, I think in the initial viewing, like we did here, it would have flowed better. We still have a little bit of a hiccup, but I think it would have flown a lot better to just what they were building for. So.
Yeah, I have to say it did make me laugh though when they split the Zeo crystal and it forms these perfect shapes, including a star. It's like, man, that's it really worked out great. But no, like that's the thing. I mean, it was really pretty clever on their part, the way that they planted these seeds, and as you're watching it, even knowing what's to come, their decision to break up and hide this crystal. I mean, it does track, right? Like you want to keep this out of the hands of the adversaries. I mean, yes, ultimately they will need this as their new power source, but based on the information they have at the time, it's not like you're not screaming at the TV, be like, what are you doing? It's like, no,
Yeah.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah. So I like Master Vile's ship. It's a flying skull. I thought it was kind of cool and just kind of, and the fact that he comes in strong, and then when they stop the eclipse and he has to leave the party because he's going to use the Zeo crystal to destroy everything, and he can't. And it was a cool little 3-episode arc because like it felt like there were stakes. You had this metallic armor that kind of felt forced, but at the same time kind of made sense. It was very, I don't know, it worked. You're talking about how I felt about the multi episodes. I feel like 3 is the sweet spot. Your beginning, middle, end type thing. But I feel like this really works as a good 3-parter.
Yeah, no, I think each episode there was enough meat on the bone in each one, right? Where they have to fight the new Tengas, and we get the introduction of Vile, the introduction of the Zeo crystal, the retrieval of the crystal, and their defeat, and the capturing of the Zords, and then again the retrieval of the Zords and the crystal and the final victory. It really all worked great. I had really not remembered much of this arc, and when I was mapping out these episodes, like, okay, like I want to talk about Zeo, and kind of looking at this transition, I was looking at the episode descriptions, and of course I'm always especially dialed into when I see those multi-parters, because those are typically where we get a lot of the movement and the additions to the mythology and all of that. So I was reading the descriptions, and it's like, okay, we know Vile is able to bring about this reversal of time, and this was his introduction. Again, had forgotten that the Zeo crystal was introduced. It all really worked out great. We skipped over just one episode, and then we watched the Rangers in Reverse, where again Master Vile creates this orb to reverse time and all of that. I mean, it's actually kind of crazy. I mean, I guess in fairness, Rangers in Reverse and that 10 episode Alien Ranger miniseries really all kind of work together. But it's kind of crazy that Rangers in Reverse is one episode. Like you would expect something like
Yeah.
that to be a multi-parter.
Like it's a weird episode that a lot happens, but not a lot happens at the same time. Like, the biggest thing is, like you said, Master Vile creates the orb. It's Kat's birthday. They're taking her to a carnival. It's her first birthday in America. And, excuse me. And, I really, the Orb of Doom frees enough to stop. My big thing was trying to understand how the time travel worked. Because it's not like everybody turned back to kids. It's not like it went backwards through time. We got the shot of like the Earth and it starts spinning backwards, because then that would mean everything goes back. It was just kind of like the Rangers themselves plus like Bulk and Skull just all of a sudden turn into kids. Because Kat doesn't go back to Australia. Because if you were reversing time,
right.
Rocky, Adam, and Aisha would be gone. Tommy would be gone. And you'd have Jason, Trini, and Zach back. And would they still be like, you know what I'm saying? It'd be a whole mess of things. I think it would have just been better if it was just like, instead of reversing time, it's like they just turned the Rangers to kids again.
I mean, that's I guess. Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. Like it doesn't track if you're following what they established, right, as far as reversing time. But so I guess it's like ultimately
they're Rita back in the dumpster.
Yeah. So I mean, essentially, it's like they're just de-aging everyone X number of years, right? Because it's not, again, it's not like everyone in the world becomes kids. So it's like they're, de-aging everyone, 10 years or something like that. I mean, it would have been better if, yes, that had just been established from the start, where Master Vile's like, this orb will steal 10 years from everyone, and it's like, okay. And so that's ultimately what happens. But yeah, when you think about it in terms of actually reversing time, it doesn't hold up. But it ends up being surprisingly easy, I thought, for Rito to plant that orb. Again, it was endlessly frustrating that they didn't call upon the metallic armor. I mean, I know this is what we were building toward. Like, it had to happen, right? But I don't know. It just felt like it was too easy.
And I tried to do a little bit of research of why they did this, and the only thing I could come up with was basically they just needed to try to find a way to burn through this footage that they had to make a series. And having all this, instead of trying to do something where the Rangers got because they used their Zords, they used everything. Like I can never pronounce it correctly, so I'm not going to try. But the Sentai series that was actually where the White Ranger came from and the Thunder Zords, they never used those costumes. They'd used all this footage, but they never used those the Ranger costumes. So they had that footage, and then they had the footage of the actual ninjas. So they just used that footage for the Alien Rangers and burned through it for 10 episodes to at least try. And I remember like the ninja toys were like little 3-4 inch figures. Do you remember those?
Kind of.
Yeah, they were small. And, everything, when you look back as a kid, everything seemed like it lasted for longer than what it did. And I just remember when they ended the episode and they were kids, you think as a child you'd be excited. Like, oh my God, the Rangers are like me, but they can't morph for some reason. And then, later in Turbo, obviously the turbo powers will allow a child to morph to become an adult, but the powers they have now won't allow a child to morph.
Well, because time has been reversed and they didn't have their powers yet. So it's like the time travel logic is at play in certain instances, but not anywhere else.
But yet, time's reversed. But Tommy's there, who didn't live there, and Rocky, Adam, and Aisha. Like I said, like their parents aren't around. They have their memories of what's going on now. So it's not like they forgot the Rangers existed or anything. I just, it's a kid's show. I get that, but you still could have made it a little bit cleaner. Okay.
No, I don't disagree. And also, to your point about you would think you would be excited when you see the Rangers as kids. You're not. And the main reason why I didn't rewatch the Alien Ranger arc for this podcast is I really wasn't interested in.
I would have argued against you. Like, we don't need to do that.
Yeah. I mean, look, we already have more than enough to talk about, but it's also like, I'm really not interested in watching the episodes without our actors, our main actors. I know David Yost is there because Billy ages up pretty early on in the arc, so he's at least there. But it's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm not particularly interested in. And I was trying to remember how I felt as a kid. I don't know how much, even as a kid, I don't know how much I really loved this stretch of episodes. And I think it's the sort of thing where, as kids watching it, you don't necessarily want to see your you don't like you want to see the characters a little bit beyond where you are, right? So when you're watching this as, a 10 or 11-year old, like watching the Rangers at 15, 16, 17, it's like, oh, you could see yourself, it's kind of more aspirational, I suppose. You don't necessarily want to see a group of 10-year-olds running around. For whatever reason, I think there's like that psychological effect. You kind of want to see ahead of where you are, as opposed to exactly where you are. So that arc, I mean, I think you're right as far as wanting to utilize that footage. And I think this was, they didn't have to pay the actors for, for 10 episodes, or well, 9, because they're in the last one. So that probably helps account for it.
You know, this is this is actually like the farewell episode of Aisha.
Yeah.
Karen Ashley, like, she gets a clip. It's kind of just feels like filler footage, but this is really her last time being on the show as a Ranger, or even just as a character.
Yeah.
And I try to remember when that switch happened, and we were talking about just a little bit about like the Alien Rangers. They even changed the theme song to "Go Go Alien Rangers."
Yeah.
The logo changes, and I just had some notes, just kind of things that pointed out, with the Alien Rangers, like you said, Billy's the adult first. They go on the quest to find the Zeo crystal and to go through things, and the most prominent part of that whole story is the fact that Aisha meets like relatives, and she meets her, I don't even know, Tanya, who she sends back with the crystal, convoluted, but basically, the next episode or whatever ends where when they go back to being adults, which is the part that we need to talk about, Tanya ages up with them. So they're all aged up in the command center, and all of a sudden this new person, and I'll get into when we get to the Zeo quest why this annoys me, but it's just like, hey, new person that has not proven themselves or anything, welcome to the team. Having just recently seen, the cat transfer to Pink Ranger. That's what I was saying about like new people just joining easily. Like Tanya, they're just like, whatever, come on.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we talk about the Alien Ranger arc, and again, I'm going based on memory, kind of what I read, and I did watch little clips here and there on YouTube from this, and I guess one of the most major developments is Rito and Goldar destroy the power coins, right? So not only do they need the Zeo crystal to fix time and re-age them, but also for a new power source. And yeah, we follow them on their Zeo quest, right? So each of the kids goes off to a different time and place to retrieve the shard of the crystal that they had sent out. And while this is happening, of course, the Alien Rangers of Aquitar have stepped in to protect Earth. So that kind of carries us through those 10 episodes. I agree. I mean, the departure of Aisha and the introduction of Tanya, it's not ideal. In terms of how it plays out, like Aisha decides to stay in Africa and she sends Tanya in her place. And like you said, I mean, Tanya is just instantly accepted. And I guess, Aisha's vouching for her goes a long way, but it's just weird because, I mean, we're just about here anyway. There are only 5 shards of the crystal, right? So only 5 sets of powers. And it's one of these things where it's like, I get they wanted to keep a certain balance in terms of the makeup of the gender on the team, but it's like that could have just been Billy.
That's what I said. I didn't want to say but that was in my notes. Like that should have been Billy, and they could have maybe done something where Tanya's training, and then they start maybe sharing the power, and then this kind of neat thing. But like this person that has no experience, nobody, just. My question to you real quick, though, I put this in my notes as we got to here. When did they graduate? Have they graduated yet?
No, they graduated at the start of Turbo.
See, and that's what I was trying to remember as like, because I know that I remember an episode where Billy basically gets to graduate early,
Yeah.
thinking like, "Oh crap!" But I'm like, Tanya just shows up at school. Aisha just drops out, and sends a letter to the school. I'm in Africa. Like that. What?
Yeah.
Where's their parents? You know what I'm saying? Come on.
I watched the episode right after a Zeo Beginning, because in the Zeo Beginning we don't even see them get the Zords yet. So I watched the next episode where they get the Zeo Zords, but that one opens with Tommy, Kat, and Tanya at school in the new lounge, the new resource center. So yeah, they're still in school and all that, and you see her kind of acclimating. And there's this baseball player who she's tutoring and kind of has a romantic interest with, and he's planning to cheat on a test, and she tells him that it's wrong, and that's sort of the the lesson of the week in that one. But I just have to say, just as a really quick side note, in that episode, they're remarking about how cool the new student lounge is, and Tanya goes, "It's great," and it's meant to be sincere, but her line reading sounds so sarcastic. It's like it's worth like pull it up on YouTube and just watch that opening scene in the student lounge, because the way she's like, "It's great." It's like it just sounds
Compared,
like.
I would have been like, compared to what, Tanya? You just moved here. You don't even know what the old one looked like.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's that. It's the other thing too that's funny to me is, and I look, they do address this, and there's a point in a Zeo Beginning where Tanya is, she kind of stays behind to get filled in by Alpha about like what's going on and all of that. But it's like how disorienting it would be to be thrust into this crisis situation. The only thing that allowed me to kind of wrap my head around it a little bit was that, unlike when the original Rangers were first summoned to the command center in Day of the Dumpster, and they had no conception of Rita, Zordon, anything, now we're at the point in time like the public knows that the Power Rangers exist, that they have these Zords, that there are these monsters. So it's like people have a frame of reference. So, and keeping in mind whatever Aisha told Tanya ahead of time, it's like, all right, I can kind of buy it. But yeah, it was like there's so much going on. We get a new base of operations. We get new Zords. We get new powers. They switch colors. Like we get new adversaries. I mean, there's still a lot we have to unpack here, but it's like there's so much transition, and it's like on top of that, we're switching out one of the Rangers. It's a bit much.
My question to you was, Tanya an adult that was aged down, or was she a child that got aged up? Because that felt awkward too. Because I got thinking about that, like she's a child when Aisha meets her, but not everybody was aged to a child.
No, but they were. I mean, I think my look, I mean, I don't know, but my understanding of the orb was that, again, I think we're in agreement. It's not literally reversing time, but I think maybe the better way to describe it, I feel like it's de-aging everyone, not everyone in the world to children, but like de-aging everyone a certain amount, like so that the range. So again, I think it's like probably about a 10-year thing. I did
I'll
not
take
take it
that.
that she was a
I'll
kid who was
take
aged up.
because that was my thought, was like, what, because like even in the scene when they're in the carnival and the Rangers are aging down, like not everyone around them is aging down. So like watching it, this time I was kind of like where Tanya falls in, like, because they even say, did Aisha change back? When they got aged up and they look in the viewing globe, and then
Yeah.
there's adult Aisha or teenager Aisha. So
So before so again, we've talked about Master Vile, we've talked about Rangers in Reverse, we've touched on Alien Rangers, but before we do Zeo Beginning 1 and 2, the Zeo cereal, those
you sent me
shorts.
that. Yeah.
Do you remember those?
No,
Okay. Did you get a chance
not
to
at
look at
all.
any of them, or no? It's okay if not.
I had to pull it up, and then I just didn't get to go back to them because I kind of forgot you had sent them, and I just got busy with everything else.
Okay. So this is one of those things where there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet. Not all of it's great. And sometimes you get frustrated dealing with the internet, but sometimes it's this wonderful thing where it's like it can, like these cereals. I feel like this was the sort of thing in my mind. I was like, did I imagine these? And thankfully, I got confirmation that I didn't. So, in the weeks leading up to the premiere of Power Rangers Zeo, reruns of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers had these 30-second shorts at the beginning. The Zeo serial, and there were, I think, about 30 of them total. 30 seconds, real short, and essentially, again, it was teeing up the new series, and the main thrust of it was that King Mondo and the Machine Empire are arriving. And so across these shorts, you're getting a lot of different characters' reactions. So we spend a few of the shorts on the moon with Rita and Zed. We spend a number of them with some scientists who are observing this phenomenon in space. We spend a number of them with Bulk and Skull. Not with our actual Rangers, though. But so it's sort of like everybody kind of preparing for the arrival of King Mondo. And it ends, I won't sing it, but it's again, as far as like another earworm, it goes, it's coming. You know, it's sung, and you get like a little one of the Zeo symbols each time. And so
Hmm.
like it just kind of kept building. And I remember seeing for sure at least one of the ones with the scientist walking into the observatory. And I remember, like, I don't think I saw many more of them because, I was trying to think about this. I don't know how often I watched the reruns. Like, I watched it religiously when I knew it was a new episode, but I don't know that I was like really watching them. And I didn't know, like, as a kid, like, I didn't know. Oh, at the beginning of every episode, we're getting
Yeah,
this serial. So I feel like I just saw like one or two of these, and the scientist ones in particular, like it was very mysterious. Like I didn't know what was going on, and so I always kind of had that in the back of my head, like what was that about? And that's what it was. And I thankfully someone on YouTube had compiled all of them, like all 30 of them. And I even had uh like little, it's like it was pulled from their VHS tapes. And so like you saw little snippets of the commercials
uh,
before and after, and it just brought you right back. Like a commercial with the fruit roll-up factory. And I was like, I was a kid again.
I found like on YouTube a whole 3 hour block pulled from someone's of Fox morning shows. So it's the shows, the commercials, and everything. And I'm like, back in the day, Saturday morning.
Yeah, it was good stuff. I was reading the wiki about it, and this does track, I guess, that ultimately the shorts were not in continuity because when you watch a Zeo Beginning, the arrival of Mon, like it happens like fast and furious,
Oh yeah,
as opposed to this kind of like longer build over the course of the serials. And also, like I said, a whole stretch of them deals with Bulk and Skull encountering the cogs for the first time. And, they're watching reports on the TV about this, this space invasion, and they're trying to like find evidence for Lieutenant Stone. But then, like later on in Zeo, I guess there's never any reference of the fact or mention of the fact that like they've already encountered these things. So I don't know that it's like officially in continuity, but they were fun to watch. Mostly just to kind of solve this mystery that I that I had as a kid. I'll just say this real quick. The only like problem I had with it was uh the the world's like everyone is so uh kind of invested and curious about what's going on. And Bulk and Skull are like trying to get evidence and like convince Lieutenant Stone, and it's just like they see these space monsters every week. Like, I don't understand why.
yeah.
I guess it was just different enough that it caught everyone's attention, but it's like I don't know. I don't know that it would be that unusual for them for
I
this
think
in this universe.
I feel like it goes back to like what we said earlier about that when they got to Zeo, it was something big. They were making it monumental because I know eventually you might talk about, but when you go from Zeo to Turbo, it's very much a it's there's adjustments there, but if I remember correctly, the movie's supposed to actually take place in continuity, I think.
Yes.
But like I feel like from Mighty Morphin to Zeo, like it's a big deal. And then as we go later, it's just kind of like the next thing, you know. So building this tension of like I said, like in my notes I have written over and over about how much they try to drive home like King Mondo, oh no, it's King Mondo, like Zed's scared, Rita's scared, like they're running out of the base. Master Vile's afraid of King Mondo and the Machine Empire. That's conquered all this space, and they're really trying to drive home how scary and powerful this guy is. So I really feel like they're trying to build that up in any and every way possible for us. Of like the machines are coming. What's that going to look like? What do our heroes do? So
No, they made it an event. I mean, that's the thing. And like for anyone who is young, a younger Power Rangers fan or whatnot, or got into the franchise later. Again, it's just par for the course that each year you're getting things switched up. I know currently, we're gearing up for season 30, and this is the first time that I think it's like the third season in a row with the same with the same crew and powers and all of that. But that's an
And
outlier.
and this new season that premieres in September is supposed to connect um, to Once and Always.
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
how, but like I read and I saw like on IMDb that Ming is supposed to appear and somehow, and I'm curious. Like I'm curious about how it'll connect. And you and I've had a conversation about how somehow the Mighty Morphing powers show up in other episodes after supposedly the powers were destroyed and we had to go to Zeo. Like we had to like because the original powers were destroyed back when we had to go to Ninja and everything. So you and I've had that conversation a little bit off air. So
For sure. But no, like that's the thing. I think just like the changing every year has just become, just it's part of the deal. But at the time, like this really felt like an event. Uh, so as we head into a Zeo beginning, at the end of the Alien Ranger arc, Hog Day Afternoon, of course, the young Rangers are able to retrieve the entire Zeo crystal. They're able to restore their ages. Again, we now have the arrival of Tanya subbing in for Aisha, and Rito and Goldar plant a bomb in the command center. So that's our big cliffhanger: the command center exploding, and then we start a Zeo beginning. With cool voiceover from Tommy as we see some flashbacks and we get so if you didn't watch Alien Rangers, you got enough of what happened where you're not lost. And so we have this two-parter that's I mean, it's a ton of setup for this 50 episode season here where the Rangers discover their new base of operations, the oh my goodness, what do they call it? Not the command center, but the power chamber beneath the command center. They get their new powers. Again, we don't get to the Zords yet. And then, of course, the other half of this is the arrival of King Mondo and the Machine Empire. So King Mondo, Queen Machina, Prince Sprocket, and they run Rita and Zed and company out of town, right?
yeah,
Ultimately boarding Serpentera to go live with Master Vile.
which is hilarious because you see them on the moon running out to get to the Zord and hiding. And you're talking about the power chamber. You know what I really liked about the power chamber was how there's like the mannequins in the back of like the Mighty Morphin suits. So it still feels like it's part of the same thing. I feel like doing it this way like really helped kind of like we've talked about cement. This is just the next part of Mighty Morphin. Like,
Yeah, I thought that was such a great touch, where and it's a really I think it's a really powerful moment when they're standing there with those figures behind them and really honoring where they've come as they're looking ahead. So again, we have the two pieces here, right? The setup with the new powers and the arrival of the new adversaries. I gotta say, I've been talking a lot since the beginning of this podcast about how I stopped watching during Zeo and how I didn't really know exactly why. I couldn't really remember. I chalked it up to it was just getting older. I was losing interest. Less kids in my class were still watching it, so I didn't have as many people to talk about. Maybe I was feeling like, oh, it wasn't cool anymore. But I gotta say, watching this now, I can't help but wonder if subconsciously, I don't know that I was even thinking about this, but subconsciously, I don't really care for Mondo, especially compared to Rita and Zed. And so I feel like as a kid, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it did lose a step in the villain department. Like, what's your take on the Machine Empire?
I agree, because like I said here, I remember when they got to, I stopped watching and I look back like I stopped watching basically because I didn't like the Alien Ranger stuff. I didn't like they were kids and I was like, I don't care. And then when I went back, I didn't realize like how everything had played out. But when I went to go back, like it was Zeo, and I kind of felt like, oh, what happened to like, I was kind of upset that my Power Rangers were gone. Billy wasn't a Ranger, and we'll get into a little bit here in a few minutes. But the Machine Empire came on. He's just like as vile and evil as he's supposed to be. He just felt more goofy. Like Sprocket, they all just felt very clanky. Um, and I didn't care for him because, by the time that we ended on Mighty Morphin, Zed was an American creation. We had recast Rita with Carla, and we got more Rita in play. So they felt like characters more than just cutaway footage.
Yep.
But King Mondo once again became back to just being cutaway footage. So I felt like a disconnect there. I mean, the Zeo powers were cool. Look, like the suits look cool, but like I think I like Zeo more now than I did then. But there was such a stark difference of how they look compared to where we left off with Mighty Morphin, and even their whole how they morphed and what they were when they morphed. And I don't know. I think I was older than you. This is what 96, 97.
Not I think, yeah, I think like 95, 96. I think in that range.
Because 95 was the movie.
Yeah.
So I would be like 11 or 12. So I'm at that age where I'm in middle school. I still like Power Rangers, but at the same time, like it's almost like starting over, but yet you're really not.
96, 97. That's when this was.
So yeah, in '96 I'm 11. So like I said, that's a year after the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, which I was all in for. Like I try to dress like the Rangers and everything. But here I don't know. It felt more disconnected, I guess, because once again we had lost Kimberly, and then we had lost Aisha that we had grown to love. Because as much as Zach, Jason, Trini were a big part, Rocky, Adam, and Aisha were a huge part of Power Rangers. And it was and Billy wasn't a Ranger, so it just I don't know. It felt a little off, I guess. And I just that like I said that I was starting to get more involved in school stuff. So I'd come home and wouldn't always be on the TV or able to because it's just life.
Yeah, look, I mean, especially as a kid, the span of a year, it's like, a lot can shift. So that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, I think what I recognize more now as an adult, again, I think this was probably subconsciously what was swimming around for me as a kid. But what I recognize now as an adult is, how much value Rita and Zed brought and how big a part of the show they became. And you're right. I mean, once we had this original footage of them and they had more storylines and again, one of the delights of revisiting this as an adult is picking up on more of the humor and the tension between them, and it added so much. And I do really feel I'll see if my opinion changes as I watch more Zeo episodes. I mean, we have two more podcast episodes on the Zeo era, so I'll see if I warm up to Mondo and the Machine Empire. But re-meeting them now because I haven't watched these episodes in 30 years. Yeah, I just like it feels like a step down. So it was really sad to see our crew have to depart. And meanwhile, Rito and Goldar have lost their memories and are working as the housekeepers for Bulk and Skull. So there's also that piece of it. So it's like Rito, it's like Bulk and Skull squared.
Like I said, I was like 11, 12, and I think I started seeing like the patterns of just you get this new toys, new Zords, new suits, new this. And I was kind of, I don't want to say disillusioned, but it's like you're taking away what I cared about. I know for sure that like I said, I watched a little Zeo here and there, but I know by the time Gold Ranger showed up, I hadn't watched anything. Because I just remember my friend who was still a hardcore watching everything. He was so pumped when the Gold Ranger thing happened. And I won't say anything about it because I know that's probably one of your future episodes. But then I watched an episode just to see, and it was cool. But I wasn't that like excited and into it as maybe I should have been. I don't know, but I think one of the big things, Billy not getting Zeo powers when they decide like who's gonna get the crystal and Zordon's assigning him, and then it felt weird for Tommy to be just a regular Ranger. It was almost a step down. Like he was always the Sixth Ranger, the coolest. He had the shield, the special weapon, the Zord. Now, dude, you're just a Ranger. You're now Zeo Ranger 5, red. Just a regular Ranger.
It's true. I mean, that is true. That is true. I mean, I know it's weird because it's like we start with Jason, the Red Ranger, like the Red Ranger is the leader, and then of course we have that shift once Tommy becomes the White Ranger, and we've talked about that. But I guess it's like now we're sort of returning to that sort of original core idea of the Red Ranger's the 5 and the Red Ranger's the leader. So I don't know. I mean, the switching of the colors, I don't know. It's interesting because it does. it mixes things up. It freshens them up a little bit, I suppose. I mean, of course, Kat remains pink. Tanya taking over for Aisha is the Yellow Ranger. And then, yeah, we have Tommy as red. Adam shifts from black to green, and Rocky shifts from red to blue, which, again, that piece of it I'm okay with, because it's like, uh, it always felt off with Rocky as the Red Ranger and in that center position in the cockpit of the Zord and all that, because like Rocky was never the leader,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
that I was okay with. And to the show's credit, I mean, they great cutaway to Billy and Alpha when they talk about Rocky being the Blue Ranger, and like you see how Billy is pained by that. Yeah, I mean, Billy stepping down. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, well, let me toss it to you first. What anything else you want to say on that front?
I just feel like why and why did David Yost stay? Like I know, like we won't go all into it, but like he was having issues, like he was being harassed, and he came on the thing that says like the reason why he left the series was he was worried about his mental health. Like he even thought about would he take his own life, and that's horrible. Like I got to meet David Yost 2 years ago at Motor City Con, and I got to tell him I was like, your character really was a big deal for me as a child. Like you were always my favorite Ranger, and it was cool, like just kind of connect with him. And then hearing more of the what he dealt with. Why didn't he just take it like this as an opportunity to just walk away and leave? Because it feels like it's once again a character that you have to try to develop and create storylines for, and him just working there. I almost, like I said, would have been neat if there was something where him and Tanya are sharing the power or something, because we all know that originally the Yellow Ranger in MMPR was a man, so having a male Yellow Ranger could have been interesting, um, or something. I don't know, like, and then of course we won't go to Gold goes up. It wasn't Billy. I don't know. I just feel like it could have been something for him to depart earlier on, and just having kind of around, or if something happened and this is where we lost Zordon. And there was a whole like arc about Zordon's lost, and Billy's actually the leader from the command center, and him and Alpha are on their own quest to retrieve Zordon, and just spitballing here. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know. Like I kind of wrestle with this because yes, on the one hand, now we've now learned what was going on behind the scenes, the discrimination that David Yost was facing, and that ultimately led him to leave the show in very unceremonious fashion. Right? I don't know that I'm not even planning like dedicated coverage on this, but the whole business where he goes to Aquitar and he's this old man, and then he's de-aged and he decides to stay, and you just kind of get like this grainy footage that wasn't actually David Yost saying like I'm staying on Aquitar. Like it's a very unfortunate situation the way it all. I mean, that's why watching Once and Always was just like this beautiful moment, and to see him come back, like it's amazing. And so it's so unfortunate that that's what he was forced to deal with. Yeah, I mean, as far as why he didn't leave sooner, I mean, it could be any number of things. It could just be that he needed the job, he needed the work. Maybe the situation hadn't gotten that bad yet. Maybe he thought it would improve. I mean, any number of things. It's like, again, knowing what was going on behind the scenes, and to whatever extent that discrimination sort of resulted in them not wanting him to be a ranger. It's hard to kind of put that out of your mind, but like just looking at the story itself, I think there is something interesting about him taking on this different role. I mean, he always was the scientific, the advisor anyway, but like now to see him kind of like more on equal footing with Zordon and Alpha, and kind of having this special role. Like there is something kind of cool about that. I mean, I have to see as I watch more episodes to kind of see how it plays out, because I don't remember kind of all of the beats of this,
Yeah,
but
I don't. I mean, honestly, I don't either.
you know,
I,
but
I remember, like I said, when he graduates early, and he loses. He just has that intro of like David Yost as Billy. He's just kind of like standing by the command center panel, like nodding his head, like, "Yeah, I'm here."
yeah, I don't know. It's tough to say. It's just like, given his stature, his tenure with the team, it's like, no, he should have been one of the five, or he should have been the Gold Ranger. Again, on the flip side, putting the behind the scenes stuff out of it, just looking at the context of the story, again, there is something kind of neat about him having this, like, he's not just one of the Rangers. Like he kind of has this different capacity now. But I don't know. It's tough. It's a you really do feel for the character in this sacrifice that he makes, right? To step down, to allow Tanya to take the power, and that look on his face when when Rocky becomes the Blue Ranger. Like it really, it gets you.
I mean, they probably all had the same problem, but the girls about the crisis of having to buy new clothes.
It makes me laugh every time, and I know we've joked about it a bunch already, but for Tommy especially, it's like this poor guy had to buy an entire green wardrobe and an entire white wardrobe and now an entire red wardrobe. And I'm just wondering, does Zordon have some sort of like clothing fabricator? Are they providing any kind of stipend? Is Alpha just dyeing his clothes? Like what's the situation? Like Tommy goes home, he's like, "Oh mom, like, I gotta go shopping. Like I gotta get an
Yeah.
entire new
Well,
wardrobe."
well, the best line was it Dino Thunder when he becomes like the Black Dino Thunder Ranger. At the end of the episode, he makes it. Oh, I gotta go shopping. I gotta buy some black. I don't have enough black in my closet or something like that. Like it's an actual joke about the fact that he's gonna wear that color. Um, so it's just one of those things. It's just like I agree. It kind of freshens him up a little bit. Like, and it was weird seeing Green for the first time as just being one of the generic Rangers. So Adam is the Green Ranger, and she's like, "Oh, okay, he's just green. Is just now one of the regular colors."
Well,
Um,
that's why when we saw the first teaser for Once and Always, and we saw that the Green Ranger was there, and this was before we knew how they were going to handle the absence of certain actors. I know one of the theories I saw floating around out there was that it could be Adam as the Green Ranger, and it's like if there's anyone who would kind of be worthy of being the Mighty Morphin Green Ranger, it would be Adam, given his tenure and the fact that he was a Green Ranger previously. I would have accepted that. I
I
mean,
mean,
obviously,
cool.
that's not what they did, but I would have accepted that.
Yeah, I would have accepted that too because I liked Adam. I just remember because like at the time when Adam joined and stuff, I was getting into playing soccer, and like Adam played soccer. So it was just one of those things like, yeah, he wore Sambas. I remember that because like he had the Adidas Sambas. I was like, yeah, that's what soccer players wore. But it was. I just remember watching it like that.
Gotcha. I think this is a minor nitpick, but when you watch the end of Hog Day Afternoon and then the beginning of Zeo, it's a little unclear to me, because it's like at the end of Alien Rangers, Goldar and Rito, they're in the command center, they steal the Zeo crystal, the bomb goes off, and then somewhere in between, like they drop the crystal
Yeah,
and lose their
yeah.
memories. So I
I
don't
just
know.
feel like the bomb caused them to lose their memory because we see that not only does the power chamber, activate with the Zeo or whatever, it rebuilds the command center on the outside.
Yeah.
So that was fascinating. But I like the power chamber, so I thought it was cool. And it made me wonder, was the power chamber the same place they built the White Ranger power? Because it kind of is like the basement to the command center. And remember how like they went down and everything was
Yeah.
like in a different part of the command center when they were building the White Ranger. Uh, but looking as we gone through this, I like what they did into Zeo, and like they have their powers are based like their Ranger is a number, and it's based on how many points are to their shape, and I always kind of thought, Zeo Ranger 2 was funny because it was two circles, you know. The others, 4 for a square, 3 for a triangle, and 5 for a star. I made a joke the other day. I was like, Zeo Ranger 8, octagon, the Purple Ranger, the octagon. I was joking with my kids, just based on shapes, So I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, it's just based on shapes.
Yeah. It is what it is. Like, I don't think anything will ever match calling out the dinosaur name. Like, that was very powerful. Even towards the end of Mighty Morphin, where it's just Pink Ranger power. It's like, nah, it just doesn't have the same oomph.
Yeah. White Ranger power. Or like at least with the Ninjetti, they did the cool thing with their fingers. It was like Ninjetti. It had like electricity shooting off of it. And then they would morph again, they would do like the little power thing with the ninja. But
Yeah. They really, yeah.
Zeo was just kind of, I was gonna say Zeo's morphers had like the dual wrist morphers, they had to put them together and it was cool. Like, but I will just say that Space had the lamest morphing of the original series. Yeah, I don't really go past Space in my knowledge, but the Space was lame with how they morphed and everything.
I mean, that aside, I've heard a lot of good things about that season. I mean, like I've been saying, this was the last year, the last season that I watched. Um, and as I'm kind of charting my fan journey on this podcast, just to give people kind of a heads up of where we're going, I don't really plan to go that far beyond Zeo. I am going to delve into Turbo because that's the stretch beyond where I watched previously that I have the most interest in. Not that I'm expecting it to be good, but because it's the final run of Tommy and Adam and Kat and Tanya. So we will delve into some Turbo. Again, as much as I've heard good things about Space, I don't necessarily have the interest to really dive in per se. What's been fascinating is just like going back to these episodes that that I watched as a kid and looking at them with fresh eyes and really coming to, for the most part, really appreciate a lot about them.
As far as like what charting, I would do like Turbo, do like the first episode, power transfer episode, and then the last episode. Space, I would do the first episode and then the last episode because that's the big like that's
Yeah.
what I consider like the cap off because that's when you get the Z wave and everything. So like looking at that, because that really is a culmination of all of what Power Rangers was building up to.
Yeah.
Um,
And that
so,
I have seen the end of that and the Z
yeah,
wave
because you and I
and
talked about that before. Like that's way back before you started the podcast. You and I had just talked about Power Rangers and we're doing something because you had mentioned it and I was like, oh, that's so cool. I love Power Rangers. Um, but yeah, past that, the only thing I would ever the Forever Red would be fun to talk about because it's just so awkward in interesting ways. So
yeah, I did watch all of those legacy episodes, and we touched on them briefly when we did Once and Always.
yeah,
I
you
don't know. We
did.
might have some more coverage at some point. I don't. We'll TBD on that. But I guess I don't know. The last thing I would say about Zeo Beginning is I don't know. I guess I was surprised at how much they really took their time to set the table for this new era. Because it's like when you think back to Day of the Dumpster, the series premiere, it's like, man, one episode and we've introduced
Oh yeah,
everybody. They're Rangers, they have their Zords. Whereas this, it's really kind of like not a ton really happens. I mean, especially on the Ranger side, they're outside the destroyed command center. They don't know what to do. It's the typical, we got to do something, but what? And then, they find the crystal and the ground gives out beyond, under them. And they're in this sub basement. And then they see this like green portal that's slimy or something when they,
yeah,
and they make their way to the chamber. And then we get this whole explanation about King Mondo and about the new powers. And it's ultimately just, their brief first outing as Zeo Rangers is just that quick cog fight. And that's it.
yeah. And like I said, they took their time because I feel like the Power Rangers did the next level in the fight against evil. Like they really talk it up. Like they spent a lot of time like talking up the danger of Mondo, talking up their powers, talking up what this is. And the first two episodes really is just kind of this setup. And the episode you watched after, that's really kind of the first start of Power Rangers Zeo. This is almost like this prologue building to Zeo because you said nothing happens. It's all kind of filler and transition and then the show actually starts.
Yeah. But I gotta say, man, it was a lot of fun to revisit this stretch and I don't know, just kind of recontextualize it for myself based on those memories that I had as a kid to actually now watch it and see. And again, I think they just did a really great job of segueing and really making it feel pretty seamless, even though this really was a new series and all of that. So kudos to them and I appreciate you coming on to talk about it. Was there anything we didn't get to that you wanted to talk about?
No, that's it.
All right,
I'm good.
right on. Well, on that note, where can people find and follow you and your podcast?
Just find me Krypton Report anywhere podcasts are. It's a DC based, Superman based podcast. Of course, that's how Anthony and I first connected. And just on social media anywhere. It's fun. We can talk about anything. I'm very active on Twitter, so you can hit me up there at Krypton Report Pod.
Right on. Well, thank you, Tyler. I appreciate you coming along for this adventure. And audience, make sure you come back in 2 weeks for our next all-new episode. We've got a couple of more installments dedicated to this Zeo era. I can't believe we're already here. I mean, it's like it's already feeling pretty bittersweet to have gone through, kind of what I've wanted to cover with Mighty Morphin, and now to be here. And I'm happy to be here for a little while in the Zeo season. So I hope people will continue to tune in. And of course, once a Ranger fan, always a Ranger fan. This show is part of the Flat Squirrel Podcast Network, home to Digging for Kryptonite, another exciting episode in the adventures of Superman, Summoning the Zords, and My Comic Shop History, available wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review today. Sign up at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato for additional content. Thank you all